Alright, so here's something kind of interesting about quantization. If you select multiple events and have quantize on, it quantizes differently depending on which event you drag. So for example, if you drag this first hit here, it'll always make sure this first hit here snaps to a beat. But if you drag this second hit here, you can see it doesn't care about the first one. It always makes sure the second one snaps to a beat, etc., etc. This seems pretty uninteresting, but it's been surprisingly useful in quite a few cases for me. Here's something kind of neat for local FX processing. So if we have all these hi-hats here, and for example, we want to add some delay stutter or something to only one of them, we can simply place a delay on here. Just make a short thing here, and then make a time selection after this hi-hat, deactivate all the FX before the delay, and just bounce this delay into this time selection here. Bake it in there. Maybe make it a bit more dense so we actually see something here. That's more like it. Delete the delay. And it's like it's always been in the audio file. Really cool way to apply FX to only certain sections of the song sort of destructively. So if we boost and cut with EQ2, like boost by 2 dB, then cut by negative 2 dB, what you can see here, especially if we make this more drastic, like maybe doing it with 9 and negative 9, is that these are not symmetrical. So boosts and cuts do not perfectly cancel each other out. But if we upgrade these to EQ+, they do cancel each other out. So if you want to do emphasis, de-emphasis EQ, you probably want to use EQ+. EQ5 and EQ2 use the same filter, so there's the same effect there. Here's a little workflow for quantizing modulation signals. So for example, if we have a chain and we want to randomly turn on or off the dry wet, the way that we want to do this is that we can't just route this here because it'll be different values here, and let's say we only want it on or only want it off. So the way that we would do this is by taking a button and random modulating this button here, and then using this button here to turn this on or off, so like dry and wet. This is really useful when you, for example, want to randomly turn on and off delays or set jump between two different amounts but don't want all the amounts in between, but still have sort of like a random sequence. So when you have a filter in EQ+, like for example a low-pass filter, and you want to change its slope, normally you would go down to the bottom here and select a different one. But what you can also do is just right-click the filter and change its slope right in place here. This will save you this mouse movement here, which sounds stupid and irrelevant, but like if you do this a lot, then actually being able to just change the filter type immediately up here without needing to go down to this thing here is surprisingly useful. When you're audio editing like an audio file with different transients in it, so for example a drum break or something, you can use your left and right arrow keys to jump between the transients of the sounds. This can be really useful if you want to precisely place cuts at different transients here, like I'm doing here with Control E. Kind of related to that is that there's a variety of kind of underused keyboard commands that we can use that all start with a shift and then a number key. So if we right click this, we can see a kind of lift of these. For example, we can use Shift 7 and Shift 0 to fade in or out from here. So if we click here and click Shift 7, we fade in, Shift 0, we fade out. Same for this. And learning these can, especially together with jumping between onsets, really speed up your drum editing. So just place something in time and then you can see these here. So Control F, Shift 7, Shift 0, set object start at Shift 8, set object end at Shift 9. So if we click here, Shift 9, bosh. And then we can go here, Shift 0, 8, etc., etc. Pretty useful. Here's one of those things that I feel I should have known for ages but didn't. If you're in the browser, you can use F1, F2, F3 to jump between these context menus. Here's a cool new automation workflow with Bitwig 6 that's kind of an alternative to LFO. So if we, for example, take, let's say, this low-pass filter here and we want to create a repeating automation, we can do that by just, let's grab the frequency here. Grabbing the frequency, maybe putting something like this, and this is our LFO shape. We then just Control J, join this, and then we can loop this automation clip. This is really useful. So this basically starts acting like an LFO because we can just edit one of these And you can see here it'll edit all of these. And then what's even cooler is that if we decide, okay, we're ready to commit, we can then Control J this into one clip. And then we can start doing stuff with the inspector. So doing things like, for example, taking the values here and scaling them, applying some chaos to them. This is really fun. So you can kind of add some subtle randomization to them. You can also do stuff like randomize the curvature a little bit, or like shift these around, or of course, if there's like a special moment in your song, like maybe here, oh, I want to open up this here, keep the rest looped. Yeah, pretty neat stuff that kind of goes beyond LFOs, and that's kind of a viable alternative workflow to LFOs. With Bitwig 6, you can now turn off the grid visibility completely. So if we like go click this little menu here and just click grid intensity and turn it all the way down, it's actually gone. And then if we turn off time snapping, we can, if we write experimental music or something, pretend like there's no grid at all. So like we can write completely off grid, just play stuff anywhere we want, and we will never have to interact with any stupid BPMs ever again. Okay, here's something that's actually pretty important if you work with Filter Plus. There's a weird hidden secret setting, which is way too hidden, which is the resonance limit. You can get this by right-clicking the background. You can see the resonance limit here. And by default, it's set to -10, which means that there's a clipper in the feedback loop of any filter. This can become really important when you do like physical modeling style stuff, where you use high resonances. So if I have like this sound here, and I want to turn this into like a car plus strong patch, the resonance limit has a huge effect on the sound. Versus, this is really tricky to find the right place to click for it. Same for like if you're using resonant SVF filters, for example, for like physical modeling, modal synthesis type stuff. So like, maybe set this to like 99.9. If we turn down the resonance limit to the default value, kind of dies down pretty quickly and it becomes slightly saturated. Whereas if we turn it up, it can actually ring out properly. So this is something especially for physical modeling, but basically anytime you want to use higher resonance values on one of these filters, be aware that this resonance limit exists and that for some reason it's not in the inspector, which is a design decision that I have opinions on. Okay, as the last tip, I want to show you some differences in CPU usage between different devices. First of all, we're just going to place a test tone here, because a lot of devices actually go into kind of a save CPU mode when there's no audio coming in, so we're just sending in some noise. And then let's, for example, get an FX layer and compare EQ2 to EQ5 to EQ+. So we get EQ2 here, create some kind of filter shape, then we duplicate this chain, we set this to EQ5, duplicate it again, and set it to EQ+. And then to make this kind of more obvious, what we do is we just duplicate this so we have, I don't know, maybe 32 or something. So 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. And then we deactivate these chains. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. Deactivate this chain. 2, 4, 16, no, 8, 16, 32. Deactivate this chain, and then we can just look at the CPU usage graph here, which will be kind of insightful. Actually, let's duplicate once more. Nope. So we actually have 64 of each, because we want these differences to be kind of obvious, just so we can see clearly what's going on here. So if we activate the EQ2 chain, small increase in CPU, nothing noteworthy. Same for the EQ5 chain. You can see these pretty much use the same CPU. EQ5 uses slightly more CPU than EQ2. And then there's EQ+, which once again uses slightly more. So if we duplicate this once more to 128, which is how I did my original tests. So this is gonna take a while because that's a lot of EQs. Same for EQ5, Control D once more. Get some lag, which is to expect it, as we're loading 64 EQs at once. And then do the same with EQ+. it'll become even more obvious that basically EQ Plus uses twice as much CPU as EQ2. Which is not the most interesting. There's gonna be ones that are more interesting. So EQ2 here. Then we have EQ5. See, this already uses quite a bit more than EQ2. Then if we compare EQ Plus to those, see here. So it's not like a huge difference. Once again, these are 128 of these. So like that's probably more than most projects are gonna use. But if you really want to save CPU in huge projects, maybe always start with EQ2s. Some other ones where this is kind of interesting, or like one I think where it's especially interesting, is filter versus filter plus, because the difference between filter and filter plus is really huge. If we just create a simple low pass filter in filter, and then create a low pass filter in filter plus, we deactivate the kind of wave shaper here, of course, just get like basic SVF, low pass filter, standard stuff. And then once again, we can just, we want the filter here. So we have one filter plus, and then once again, let's do the duplicating game. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Deactivate. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Deactivate. You can already see, maybe if you just want some basic filtering, you should use filter and not filter plus, because filter plus is a grid patch. It's 4 times oversampled. Only use this when you actually need the specialty functions of this. When you don't, maybe just use a simple filter, because it'll really save you a bunch of CPU. Kind of similar situation we have here for compressor plus versus, for example, my default go-to device for compression is Dynamics. Then there's compressor plus. Once again, compressor plus uses way more CPU. So if we just duplicate Dynamics 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, let's just do 32. I think that'll be enough. And let's do 64. Why not? And then do the same for compressor plus 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. You can already see 64. If we only deactivate the compressor plus chain, just have the dynamics, okay, this is our CPU usage. If we did the same with 64 compressor plus instances across our mix, it's gonna use a lot more CPU, and these kinds of things, these can definitely matter. So compressor plus, once again, one of those things, when you don't need its specialty filter, specialty features, like maybe the multiband analysis, the fancy modes, or when maybe pristine audio quality isn't your #1 priority, maybe just use a dynamics or a compressor device. Just a thought there, because yeah, these can really matter. So with EQ Plus, for me personally, I don't worry about it too much, because like it's still fairly efficient, and I just like the workflow more than with EQ5. But with filter versus filter plus and dynamics versus compressor plus, usually it's safer to just use the simpler device, unless you actually need the fancier features of the fancier device. So yeah, that's quite good to know, I think. Oh, outro. You should become a channel member, because I've been making tons of videos there. Lots of stuff about Bitwig limiters and like limiters in general, and a bunch of other nerd shit and stuff. Which if you clicked on this video, you probably like that sort of thing.